Before we begin today, I wanted to point out that I'm wearing this button that's part of the South by Southwest Collaborations for a Cause. The sunflower is a national flower of Ukraine, and they've done 2 pieces of merch to support relief efforts. This pin and a t-shirt. Proceeds from the sales will go to Global Giving and the Kiv Independent. Please support if you can. Our next guest is a comedian, a writer, an activist, a cultural, it's gross. If I read his bio, it's just disgusting. It goes on forever. He also helped relaunch The Daily Show with Trevor Noah, among doing just awesome things. His latest podcast is called How to Citizen, and he's got a new PBS series premiering July 5th called America Outdoors. Please welcome Baratunde Thurston.
Baratunde, good to be here.
I have not seen you, sir, in 4 years.
Yes.
The last time we met, you were about to go on stage at TED.
I was.
Not just the TEDx. You were TED. Big time TED. and your title, if I remember, look, I did my homework. Deconstructing Racism, one headline at a time.
How to deconstruct.
How to describe it.
Yeah,
What was
I'm
the
big on
how-to
how-tos,
there?
yeah.
The how-to always sells.
Yeah.
Has millions of views.
Yeah.
And back in the day, before you do How to Citizen, you did a podcast, I think it was 2012, correct me if I'm wrong, How to Be Black.
My book was How to Be Black.
In America, right?
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
Let's fast forward 10 years.
Yeah.
Okay, it's 2022.
It is.
How can you be black and safe anywhere in the world right now? It's a simple question.
No, you're starting with the light stuff.
Yeah, the light stuff.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
We're going to ease in
We'll ease
to your
into
favorite
fun.
beverage.
Start off with trauma.
Yeah, sure.
Good. Thanks, Dad. With great patience, with great respect for history, with remembering to take time to breathe and find inner joy even when there's outer turmoil, and with each other. You know, we can be black and safe together. We can all be safer together. And it's a hard time coming off these 2 years of deep COVID and inflammatory unrest in the US, seeing what's happening in Ukraine, and even there, finding moments of racism for the African. I'm being very generous.
Yeah.
I mean, look, though, it's not like every moment in that is a racist moment, but we find them where we least want to, where the world is rallying to be compassionate and help folks who are in a tough spot. For me, it's been hard to see 2 things. Past the obvious suffering of the Ukrainians themselves, which is the suffering inflicted on African students and others with darker skin, Muslims, Indians, also trying to escape and not be bombed upon. And then the fact that so much of our attention focused rightly on this moment was wrongly unfocused on other tragic conflict moments in recent history of what's been happening in Syria, what's been happening in Tigray and Ethiopia. So it's not a competition of struggle, but a lamentation of our inability to equally empathize and not to deny anything to the righteousness of the cause that's going on right now, but just to mourn with those who are also suffering as well.
Yeah, the inability to expand.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Just expand your consciousness, expand your zones of concern. You can hold multiple concerns at the same time.
And I know a lot of us we're hyper concerned. Like, we're still concerned about masking or not masking. We're concerned about paychecks. We're concerned about gas prices. We're concerned about police presence or lack of presence, depending on where you are in the world and in the country. So none of this is easy. But that's why we have coffee.
A lot of it. It kind of intersected with me while I was just doing the intro.
Yeah.
You know, I was remembering, okay, the book came out, How to Be Black. The TED Talk was How to Deconstruct the Headlines, and Ukraine.
Yeah.
And you look at the headlines right now with Ukraine. You literally have our colleagues in the media openly saying, well, it's not like Afghanistan and Iraq.
Right.
They look like us, Baratunde.
They're civilized.
They're civilized.
Yes.
And it's not just one-off. It's like an entire clip. Daily Show did a fantastic clip. It went on for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Here's a Hall of Fame list of the past week where our media colleagues are straight up empathizing with refugees who look like them and who are civilized. And when you hear that and when you see the headlines, as a content creator, as a colleague of these individuals, how does that hit you differently?
Painfully and impatiently, because we're repeating some of the same cycles. So in the spirit of deconstructing, I say, okay, let's take this word civilized. How are we defining that? Is it civilized to subject entire peoples to dehumanization and abject poverty, to create conditions over hundreds of years that we then look at and call uncivilized from our perch atop the bones of bloodied people and the land that's been stolen from them? Who's uncivilized, right? So there's a way to ask that. But then I try to think, like, I know enough about human psychology and evolution to be like, look, we all identify with people who look like us.
Yeah.
That's programming we try to overcome with policies, but it is in our nature at times to create in-groups and out-groups. I would respect more a journalist who said, look, I'm not supposed to say this, but I feel a bigger connection here because they look like me and they look like my kids. And I'm gonna do my best to cover this fairly, but you should know that I'm bringing something extra to this. In the same way that Obama said that Trayvon could look like his son.
That's right.
Right, there's a human acknowledgement that folks skip over, and I think journalists pretend to not be human often, and so they have this gravitas and this credibility and all the chyrons, and it has the stamp of officialdom. So you're officially saying...
Well, some people have the stamp of officialdom.
Yes, that's true.
Some people have the privilege of being the neutral observer.
And the arbiters of truth.
Yeah. Or the assumption that you're the arbiter of truth.
Yeah, so I'm standing in a flak jacket. I have this logo on my microphone. I'm being paid and insured to say this official record thing. Civilized people are being bombed. This is not like Afghanistan. So Afghanis aren't civilized? You just codified that. And you stripped out your human excuse for doing that. So that's what makes it worse for me. I don't expect people to be perfect. I'm not perfect. But I would hope with everything we continue to learn that if you can be more human, even as you acknowledge your biases, you can help overcome them. And so it's a missed opportunity for a lot of these people.
And it's who gets the privilege of being seen as an objective observer.
Yeah.
And you know, and I know, because you've been in this game for a long time, is that because you're a black man, if you talk about racism, if you talk about immigration.
Well, I'm playing the race card.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
You can never be objective. Right?
Yeah.
And so instead, you're either siloed as the black guy.
Yeah. I'm a special interest group.
There you go. Yeah. You have the asterisks, right?
Yeah.
And so that must be very frustrating when you see the open bias kind of unconsciously being revealed on television. And you're like, yo, you guys are the ones telling me that I can't talk about this issue because I'm too hysterical and too emotional.
Well, I think, who's really obsessed with race is...
It's a view, of course.
It's a good question, right? It's pinned on the people who have suffered because of race. Yeah. But the folks who designed or benefited from that system predicated on race are more deeply obsessed, more deeply invested in systems of racism. And that's a very hard thing to admit. And we got to teach that. And in some places, that's illegal now, of course.
The books by black and brown authors are more dangerous than masks and vaccines during a pandemic.
Or guns.
Or we need more guns to protect the kids.
In schools.
From mass shootings.
From all those books that are threatening.
It's an interesting point that you make, is that, oftentimes when we talk about these issues, oh, those darkies, there they go again, obsessed about racism. And I was talking to someone else, we're like, I would love to talk about anything else.
Oh, yeah.
I would love to talk, I'm sure my kid loves Pokemon. Let's talk about Pokemon.
To be obsessed with Pokemon?
I've been doing Lego during the pandemic. Let's talk about Lego, Yes. What is the line where you draw now in 2022? We're like, okay, I have the expertise, I've done the work, I'm a cultural critic, you look to me for my expertise, my intelligence, my wit, but I'm gonna draw the line. Yeah. You gotta do the work too, I'm exhausted.
Yeah, I do that in small moments every week. And there are times when I don't take the call. I don't go on air to talk about the thing. It's re-traumatizing. And I take a nap instead. It's my little reparations nap.
Pro naps.
Yep.
Many guests have come on here the past week and said, just take naps.
I meditate. I eat a good meal. I spend time with my wife. I go for a walk. And that is more restorative than continuing to bang my head against this particular wall. And there are other people who are able to step in and do some of this too. We all have to do something. Everybody's got a little different thing to do. What I have learned, though, on the cautionary tale is that I can't just walk away. And I don't think we collectively, the browner people of the world, can just be like, white people, it's your problem. Go look it up. There's Google. Like, there's a lot of junk on Google. I want to sit next to you while you Google.
Curate your Google search.
Yeah, have you seen what Google has helped foment in terms of rebellion through various platforms that is getting people access to and elevating conspiracy theory? So just telling people to Google it, I think is a reckless move. It comes from an emotional and exhausted place, so I understand it. I don't think it's in our interest in the long run.
It's going to hurt us in the long run.
I used to do this podcast called About Race, and one of my colleagues in the show was this white dude, Tanner Colby. Great guy, wrote a book called Some of My Best Friends Are Black. And I had this argument with him on the show. I said, I'm done. I've written a book. I've done this podcast with you. I'm out here on these social media streets. Plus, my people created the blues. Like, you can listen to it. You don't have to be able to read, even. Right. We put it in song. And just go do the work.
You can
your
YouTube
research.
it. You don't even need a record.
Yeah. And he's like, Baratunde, you don't want to do that. If you just leave it to white people, we will mess this up.
You'll go to Rogan.
Yeah, right? And you, left to our own devices, we don't have the experience. So it's a collaboration. And my entire existence doesn't need to be centered on opposition to white supremacy or whiteness in the construct of race, but I'm not willing to cede my entire existence to that system which was designed to destroy me. I got to find that balance, and I think we all have to as well.
And this intersects in a big way because people say, oh, these are just race issues, but we're seeing how this is affecting democracy, both here and abroad.
Yeah.
You can disagree with my assessment.
Okay.
I think we're witnessing the death rattle of white supremacy, which has transformed into a death march. We're seeing in Hungary and Poland, Russia, United States, white Christian nationalism with this last gasp. You're seeing this type of polarization, tribalism, where there is the in-group and the out-group just happens to be immigrants, refugees, Muslims, people of color, LGBTQ, and women.
Yeah.
Right? And so the strong man rises up and says, I'm going to protect Western values, Russian values, Hungarian values, American values by protecting you against them.
Yeah.
And then you couple that, like you mentioned, with the rise of misinformation. So your new podcast is How to Citizen.
Yeah, citizen as a verb.
Citizen as a verb. And you know, this is my take on this, is that the people who've had to fight and people who know how to citizen are black people. It's
My man.
It's like, let me teach you, America, what
Yeah.
we've been witnessing. And so how can you take those experiences and now pivot it to give the lessons to rest of Americans who are like, oh crap, this is why I have to pay attention to voting suppression.
Yeah. So I've had the opportunity to talk to a lot of companies during the past 2 years, and they just want to grab any black person. Just tell us that we're not bad.
Yeah, you. How about you? Come.
And so I get that call. It's like a bat phone for wokeness. And sometimes, you know, they, where was I even going with this? I had a whole thing.
No, your bat phone, you're the token black guy asked by how to talk about wokeness.
The teaching and the learning. Yeah. That I don't think there is a sole educator on this. Like, there's stuff I want to learn. I created the podcast not just to teach and be on the pedestal, on the mountaintop, but also to encourage all of us that we have something to offer and that learning's okay. Like, we don't have to have all the answers to this, but we do have to be trying to answer them together. So when we look at this moment of, okay, black people have been through something, and we have tried to hold America to account, tried to show America who she fully is, not just the bad parts, but that she's capable of changing and adapting and evolving, that should be a hopeful message. There should be something in it for you. And now I found what my original point was. These companies like to, some of them say, we don't want to get involved in politics. You know, Black Lives Matter is a political statement. We don't want to stick our necks out like that. And I think they forget the interconnectedness of us all. That if we start to have not governments, but regimes, and if those with that form of political power are not operating in the best interest of the whole, if they're willing to sacrifice human rights for some, they're willing to sacrifice them for all. Yeah. And your property rights won't be upheld either. Like, we all exist for the grace of a collective belief in ourselves. And the moment that our government starts saying, you don't matter, we won't enforce this, it's a slippery slope.
Yeah, fascism isn't really good for business in the long run.
It isn't. And so if you think your bank account is safe, if you think your building is safe, and you're not willing to invest in it by promoting, you know, democracy and voting, like small d democracy, thinking you're separate from the system that supports you is really self-destructive. And that applies to a company that doesn't want to get involved in politics or democracy. It applies to a species that sees the environment as something separate
Doesn't
from
affect
ourselves,
me.
right?
Yeah.
And it's like, if we are not going to support the systems that we depend on and let them decay, that's going to ultimately come back and hurt us. So I'm trying to learn that. I'm saying it relatively smoothly now. It's not easy every day. So part of the practice with the show was, how do we practice that? How do you practice citizening as a verb? And sometimes that involves shut up and listen to black people. And sometimes that involves everybody shut up and listen to the earth and the trees, or listen to each other in a different way so that we can work across these many lines of difference.
On the flip side of that, you know, how to citizen, I've been hearing more and more, especially leading up to the 2022 and 2024 elections.
Here we go again.
Many black and brown folks are like, you expect me to citizen and to teach you? I wasn't even allowed to be a citizen. Yeah. And you know what? We came out during the pandemic. We were denied the right to vote by mail by the Supreme Court. We stood in line for 8 hours to 9 hours. We gave Biden Georgia, we gave you Wisconsin, we gave you Arizona, we gave you the Rust Belt. 81 million people came out. and you don't care about us. So, okay, we've survived this before. You white folks and you privileged folks, you figure this out. We're tapping out.
Yeah.
Your response to them?
It's similar to the response we talked about already. I understand the emotion of that, and there's a truth to that, and there's a self-satisfaction that I feel when I hear that. I'm like, yeah, you deal with it, but I still live with you.
Oh.
You know, and I am subject to your interpretation of your own rights and power. So if I cede that, ceding power is giving away my own. The good news is there's other ways to exercise it, and so to not just be vague here, voting isn't the only way to citizen. You can citizen with your dollars, you can citizen with your body, you can citizen with your mind and your self-expression and the type of art you make. And so there's many ways to show up and support community, and not putting all your eggs in delegating your power to one elected official.
Right.
Is very wise. We should diversify our civic investments like we do with our
And you can run for office.
and you can also get in there yourself.
The bar is low.
It is so low. So
We had
low.
the guy who was in Home Alone 2 as president. I think the bar is low.
We did. The online steak salesman served a full term.
Yes, sir.
And we all are going to have to live with that
And he
forever.
probably is running again in 2024.
And I'm pre-exhausted.
Yeah,
of that
yeah.
campaign.
Hopefully he won't. You know, like you've been behind the scenes often. We've heard your voice. We've read your books. You've consulted. You did the digital strategy for Daily Show, but now you're in front of the camera.
Yeah.
And PBS said, "All right, Baratunde, go outdoors across America." Now I'll be honest with you. I told this to you right before we started. Once I heard the pitch, I'm like, I'm praying for him. I'm praying for him. I hope this guy survives. I hope Baratunde survives. They're sending him
I
across
survived.
America.
I
And you
survived.
survived and you
Yeah.
came back.
I came back more
Tell us
whole.
about this show where you go outdoors all across America.
Yeah. So it's called America Outdoors. It airs on PBS July 5th, which I love because it's a show about our common ground, you know, and all the difference we have across it. This isn't just a nature show. So we don't do time-lapse photos of trees growing.
Those are wonderful too.
They're beautiful.
We don't
They're
hate on those
literally,
shows.
the slow motion cameras are. I'm all about that. And it's not typical outdoorsman show. You know, I have this image of an outdoorsman as a man. First, it's right there in the word, outdoorsman, and a scraggly bearded white dude who's like conquering something.
Flannel shirt.
Yeah, flannel shirt, vest, denim, boots, an oar or a rod
some meat-
or a gun
and some meat
with
on
meat
it.
on the end
Yeah.
of it. Yeah, like he slayed a dragon. They probably bought it at the supermarket and stuck it on there. And instead what I found was all of us need the outdoors, need nature. So I went surfing with more black people than I'd ever seen on surfboards at one time in my life in Topanga Beach in Los Angeles. I went hiking the Appalachian Trail in part with the woman who set the world record for the fastest through hike on that trail. I went whitewater rafting in Appalachia with a paralyzed dude. And I got to spend precious, humbling time with 3 different indigenous nations on their land, reminding me that this is still their land. And so deepening that honoring of what does it even mean to be American? Well, one, it means acknowledging the people who were here before there was a thing called America. So this show allowed me to engage in conversations about class and race and food policy and climate change, but on the earth, like grounded, literally grounded. And often with people whose politics I knew were very different from mine, but we shared this common respect for this natural environment that we all need.
And you got paid for this.
And I got paid. And I,
Dude, brother.
I got more
living the
fit.
American dream.
You can see me like losing weight across the series too, because I'm hiking, I'm kayaking, I'm climbing stuff. And by episode 5, my hair, I figured that out, you know, in the
You
swamps.
got abs. Yeah, you're like, oh, well, let me just do a pose here.
Start doing a lot of stretching later.
With the 30 seconds I have, like
Yeah.
I said before, I could talk to you for 30 more minutes easily. What is giving you joy in this painful moment that we as a human species are living through?
Some streaming shows are giving me joy. Outside is giving me joy. And I think sometimes I lose hope that we can learn as people. Like we're making the same mistakes over and over and over again. And other times I see a flash that we can adapt and change and move forward. And I think seeing indigenous people so much more present. Like when I grew up, we just saw them in museums and history books.
And with the tear coming down their eye in the
Right?
commercial.
And propaganda views of Thanksgiving. Now we're actually seeing folks, whether it's at the DNC, you know, whether it's land acknowledgements at public events, whether it's more scripted and unscripted programming on our entertainment universe, these people who were here first are also still here. They're not just an historic relic. And that gives me hope. I feel like that's the original sin of this country, is the displacement and near genocide of many of those nations. Second sin being mass enslavement and dehumanization of Africans for free labor to build the greatest economy ever. If we can make right or more right that first sin, it gives me hope for a lot of the other ones, that we can continue becoming a more whole people.
Podcast is How to Citizen.
HowToCitizen.com.
Show is coming out on PBS.
July
What
5th.
date again?
July 5th.
July 5th.
Happy birthday, right after America's
It's-
birthday.
And also, we'll talk about this next time. You're also writing for Puck.
That's right.
To sign up.
Puck.news.
Look, tell 'em.
Puck.news. Check it out. We cover the power centers, the tech, media, finance, and politics. And I'm with a dope crew of journalists. I'm the guy who just writes analysis, but they've got deep sources and are really shining a light on these corners of power that make so much difference in all of our worlds.
And also, finally, amazing hat. Well done.
Yes.
Baratunde, thanks for stopping by.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for stopping by, and thanks for all the things that you do to make this world, and especially this country, a better democracy. Don't forget, you can watch all of our studio interviews on the South by Southwest TV app, available on Apple TV, Roku, Android TV, and Amazon Fire. These interviews are also available on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/SXSW. And for a complete list of our interview schedule, check out sxsw.com/studio. I'm Wajat Ali, and thanks for tuning in.